to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer, and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television, as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
We've all seen those memes where the video kind of pauses while someone's thinking about the answer, and the little lollipop or the spinning dial goes around on the screen for a few seconds. I had one of those moments recently when we told our toddler, hey, we need you to pick up your toys, we're going to eat dinner, then you're going to take a bath, and it's bedtime. And the toddler response threw us all for a loop. The toddler said, I can't want to. What? What do you mean you can't want to? What does that even mean? But all of a sudden, we're all stopping and thinking, we now have an attitude in front of us, and somebody's going to have to make a hard decision. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And if you're a leader of any level, you know for a fact there are people on your team. There are people in your customer base. There are people that you deal with just trying to go to the grocery store that have an attitude. And you know that in dealing with those people who have an attitude, you sometimes have to get past that attitude to get the next thing done. I want to show you a clip. Now, I watched this entire debate live, and I've seen a lot of people kind of kidnap this clip. This one's from Mcash Flow, I think is the name of the person who did this remix. And they've kind of mixed in some Joe Rogan, and it's got a really kind of distasteful title because it's not truth. But I watched the entire interview, and this is a great clip from a conversation that Patrick Bet-David had on a little show called Jubilee. Roll that clip, producer.
I have put in 477 applications over the last 2.5 years. Not even gotten a call back once.
Why do you think?
Because I do not have a degree. I live in an area where the physical job market is very limiting.
Does your family live there? Mom, dad, everybody's in that same city?
Everybody was at one point.
Okay.
Most of them are dead now.
Sorry to hear.
It is what it is. It's poverty. We're kind of used to that on this side.
Why do you feel like you're a victim? The way you speak?
Because I exist.
What do you have on your resume? What do you offer?
Transportation expertise, logistics expertise.
How about I interview you and I give you a job? And let's see what you do 90 days later.
Okay. I'll look up your company and all that kind of stuff.
You just said you applied to 477 companies who's not gone back to you.
Yeah.
A business owner just made an offer to you. You became selected. I gave you a job, period. And I paid you a reasonable wage.
Are we talking a livable wage or a reasonable wage?
What do you
and
make
whose
right
version
now?
of reasonable are we
What do you
talking
make
about?
right
Your
now?
version of reasonable or my version of
But you
reasonable?
see, in this instance, you're trying to get a job and you're being selected. It's going to work against you. My
more than
offer's
more.
off the table
Okay, that's
because
fine.
you're going to be difficult to work with.
Now, I want you to think for a moment about the number of people you've encountered in a job interview where the attitude is already in place before they even get the job. They have these high expectations of how much I'm going to get paid and who I'm going to work with and what kind of job title I'll have. I remember interviewing for a position one time, and the guy said, you don't really want a job, you just want a title. I was in my 20s, and I was probably as entitled as anybody else in their 20s. I mean, I'd just come out of the military. I had high expectations for myself and my future and what I was going to be able to do. That didn't have anything to do with my capacity or my competency or my previous accomplishments, my credibility or my credentials. It was all driven around what I wanted. How you think about what you feel and what you feel about what you think. That's an attitude. And when people come in for a job interview and they already are demanding what that job is going to look like, when they're already demanding what they're going to get paid, when they're already demanding, I want the corner office and I want a pay raise every 3 months, that's a problem. I remember listening to someone ask Simon Sinek, what is the challenge with this generation? This generation. I use that loosely because we seem to have similar things repeated since I was in my 20s until now. And that's a couple of generations at least, because my kids are in their 20s and 30s. What is the challenge we have with this generation, getting them fully gainfully employed, et cetera, et cetera? And one of the answers that Simon Sinek gave, and I thought it was brilliant, it was a brilliant observation. He said, we used to say, I want a job so I can live the American dream, buy a house, buy a car, pay these things off, send my kids to college, retire, put my feet up, and relax. He said, for that reason, the greatest generation, if you will, the World War II generation, the baby boomers generation, even the early Gen Xers, that was the pattern. Go to school, perhaps go to college or go to trade school, get a good job that you can stay in for 20 or 30 years, retire, and be done. That's not what happens these days. What Simon pointed out was, again, a very brilliant observation. He said, young people today want to walk in the door, and within 90 days, they don't just want to have a job with a title promotion opportunity. They want to walk in 90 days later and say, have I made a difference in the world? They're not looking for titles and promotions per se, or raises and income levels per se, but what they're looking for is significance. They want to know that they made a significant contribution. Now, I'm going to have to say, in the clip we just watched, the attitude he had wasn't, I want to be significant. The attitude he demonstrated, or as I observed it anyway, was, I'm already significant and your job needs to measure up to me. Now, I don't know if you know the person who offered him the job. His name is Patrick Bet-David. He's a billionaire with a B, a couple of times over. 4.2-ish, I think the last time I looked, was his net worth. He has several companies, several industries, scattered all over the place, all over the world. Merchandising is a big part of it. He has one piece of merchandise that he sells that he actually flies to Italy to have it handmade. True story. Well, the guy just said, I work in logistics. I do trucking and shipping and that kind of stuff. Okay, a guy that moves that much merchandise, not a bad place to work. A good job. A lot of his earners earn in six figures. Why would you not even consider the job? Not even show up for 90 days, put a little money in the bank. If you don't like it, move on. But you got excuses out of the gate? That's not somebody who's looking to be significant. That's not looking to get a new raise or move to a new opportunity. That's someone who starts from the gate making excuses. That's a bad attitude. See, one of the challenges that leaders have is that leaders have to make a decision early. Leaders have to make a decision early. John Maxwell says it like this: we tend to hire people for what they know and then fire them for who they are. Another way John talks about that in team building is we need to build teams around people who may or may not have the aptitude to do the job. They don't have the credentials, they don't have the credibility, they don't have the skill set, they've never done this job before, but they have the right kind of attitude. They're willing to show up, put in the hard work, start at the bottom, work their way to the top. In fact, the guy right now who runs the Maxwell Leadership Institute started in the mailroom. In the mailroom. Almost 30 years later, he's the CEO. That's a pretty significant contribution over all those years to work your way up from the very bottom, delivering envelopes inside the office. Nobody knew who he was until he showed up with the wrong package or didn't bring the one they were looking for. And now he's running the place. You've got to be willing to have the right kind of attitude from day one through 30 years of history to reach that kind of level. But it's hard these days to find people who have that kind of attitude, the humility necessary. Well, if you hire for aptitude only and you don't even look at the attitude, then you're going to be in that other spot. We hired them because they knew the job. We hired them because they had the credential. They had the right education. They went to the right schools. Awesome. But if you don't hire them for who they are, the attitude they bring to the workplace will not just impact their job. It will impact your bottom line. And, as I mentioned before, attitude is more contagious than the common cold. They come into your workplace with a bad attitude. I promise you that attitude is going to seep into the rest of your workplace. You may think this person is not significant in the job structure. They're not significant in the team organization. They don't hold a position of influence. I got a promotion one time because I was asked to stop doing something. True story. I've used this story before. It's a great thing to insert right here because it demonstrates something that the leadership at the time did not know. I didn't comprehend. This was 20 plus years ago. I had no idea that it was true, but it was. So I was in a meeting with a bunch of other muckety mucks, and I had been hired on as a manager / director level to do a job because I had a background in printing and marketing. And so I was hired at this organization that was going to do a statewide newspaper. And we were in a big meeting with all the head honchos. And I was called in because I was the only one in the distribution unit at that time. And I'm sitting in the meeting and I'm listening to all these ideas. And I hear a guy throw out some ideas. And to me, they might have as well been in a foreign language. They made no sense at all. And there was no way that my team could execute on that. And I told him that. I pushed back. And I got a loud voice, and I sometimes have a heavy opinion, and I shared it. Well, later that day, I was called into the CEO's office, and the CEO said, you know, when you and so-and-so went back and forth over this particular idea, he felt physically threatened. Now, he was well over 6 foot. He was close to 300 pounds. He was way bigger than me. But he felt physically threatened by the fact that I had an attitude and an opinion about my ideas. And so the CEO said, you can't be acting that way if you're going to be in these big meetings like this. You got to chill out. I'm like, well, but was I wrong? He said, that doesn't matter. It's the way you brought it to the meeting. Well, that made me even more frustrated. So we went back and forth, me and the CEO, for a few minutes. And finally, his determination was, I just want you to chill out and don't act like that in meetings. I heard that is, you know, shut up, just stay under the radar, do your job, and stay out of the way. So for the next couple of weeks, I came in, I did my job quietly, I stayed out of everybody's way. I got called back into the CEO's office, and he says, listen, I don't know exactly what to do here, but I've had half a dozen people come to me going, what's wrong? Where's the company going? What are we doing? I know we're a launch, we're a startup, but... And he said, I had no idea that you being quiet had such an impact on everybody. I'm like, I just come in the door and go to my desk. He said, I know. And that change of demeanor has everybody in the office scared. I'm like, I didn't do anything. He said, I understand that. I didn't realize your character, your personality had so much influence in the office. I want you to think about that for a minute. Because I'd be willing to bet that there are people in your team, in your organization, in your circle of friends, who, if they have a down day, what people expect from them, from their attitude, from their communication style, from their compassion from others, from the way that they interact with people, when they have a down day, it doesn't just affect them. It affects the entire environment. It affects the entire event. And when you realize you have people on your team like that, I don't care what their title is, those are leaders. The kind of person whose attitude drives the environment, that's a leader, because leadership is influence. Now, here's the real question for you as the titled leader, as the owner of the company, as the manager, as the supervisor, whatever your responsibility is. One of your chief responsibilities is decision making. And one of the chief decisions you have to make is, what is the attitude we want in this workplace? Now, we've been working through some of the difficult attitudes. Yesterday, I gave you the list of the 5. If you've used the attitude hack, oh, by the way, these 2 little forms, you don't get these in the free download. This is part of what we use in our corporate consulting and coaching. But these are the team attitude check and the individual attitude check. And again, they're the same kind of mechanism. These 2 little tools allow you to look at the common phrases and thoughts in the heads of the people on your team that may not be work related. They may just be the story they're already telling in their head. I'll give you an example from the personal attitude check. I cannot think of anything I have ever done that would earn a medal or a fancy ribbon. Now, if you just ask somebody, hey, give me a list real quick of the things that you've done in your life that, you know, they're big wins. Most people are going to go with their education, maybe their military achievements or their sports achievements, and then they're done. In fact, there are a lot of parents who on their list of achievements wouldn't even list being a parent. True story. And yet that story is what's going on in their head, which is driving their attitude. What I think about how I feel about what I think. Those attitudes are infecting your entire workplace. Have a fight with your spouse at home. You come to work. What's your attitude like? You're going to have to make a decision as a leader. What are the attitudes I want in this workplace? What are the ones that when I see them, when I hear that negativity, I'm going to nip that in the bud right away. I'm going to correct that conversation. I'm going to insert myself into it and accept a new attitude. Those are the decisions of the leaders and the managers on your team. They've got to be aware and alert and astute. And if you don't know what that looks like, go back and watch the last episode. And you're going to see that there's actually a structural way to go about dismantling or deconstructing an attitude and building another one. Today I want to focus a little bit on two attitudes that were demonstrated even in the little video clip that we showed at the beginning. Here's the first one I want to talk about. It's the blame attitude, the attitude of blame. If so-and-so would do X, I could do my job better. If so-and-so would do X, I could do my job better. If I was in charge, it would be more like this. Now, we even heard in that little clip the guy say, well, you know, my kind of people, because we come from this kind of place. And he's like, well, how's your family? He's like, they're all gone. But it's poverty. We expect that. That's a victim mentality already. That's a little bit of it's me against the world already just seeping into his early conversation. But think how many things in a job expectation that would be impacted by that worldview, that belief, that ability to look at myself and go, no matter what's happened, it's somebody else's fault. That attitude of blame has some deep, deep roots, usually in self-belief. But it expresses itself through these little phrases and attitudes. Well, if so-and-so would do their job better, then I could do my job. That's a lack of personal responsibility. That casting blame on somebody else means I can't fix it. There's nothing I can do about it. But if they would do their job better, then I could do my job better. That also leaves somebody with the excuse of saying, no matter how bad I do, I don't show up on time, I do shoddy work, I don't deliver, I don't get the work done in the time frame that's supposed to be, I'm not giving you my best work. I can do all of that because I still have a way to blame somebody else for my own shortcomings and my own failures. That's a big problem. But that's what blame as an attitude will do. When I feel like I'm being pushed back on, when I feel like I'm being cornered because my performance isn't up to task, when I feel like no matter what I do, you're judging me, I'm going to blame somebody else. I'm not going to take responsibility and ask what could I do differently, what could I do better. I'm going to push the blame towards somebody else. Here's what happens when blame is an attitude that takes over your workplace. Fault finding and failure to accept responsibility. I will always look, if I operate with an attitude of blame, I will always look for the excuse that makes it somebody else's problem. I will never look to find where I'm at fault, where it's my responsibility, where I can make the correction or I can fix it. I don't want to do that. I operate with an attitude of blame. I don't have any desire to fix it. I'm not going to change it. I'm always going to throw it off on somebody else. Now, if you've worked around somebody like that, siblings, neighbors, a community, your workplace, the people you serve, it's a real uphill climb to get them to take responsibility, to make change in their life, to embrace change and transformation. They don't want to do that. They look at every failure as somebody else's. Now let's look at one of the partner attitudes that tends to go with this. If we think of the victim Olympics, everything in the world is wrong, and I deserve, I ought to get more. This partner attitude sounds like this. I will do exactly as much as I have to until I get the raise, the promotion, or the recognition that I deserve. Why does he or she get that and not me? Now, I could throw some other little phrases in there you might hear like, you can't do that to me. You can't treat me this way, say those things to me, demand those expectations of me, hold me accountable for that. You can't do that. And this attitude is very broad reaching, and it seems to be exacerbated in certain seasons of life, age ranges, educational levels, and sometimes people grow out of it. Not everybody grows out of it. Here's the attitude. It's called the attitude of entitlement. The attitude of entitlement. Toddlers generally are very entitled. Why? Well, because from the time they're infants and we bring them home, they have the expectation that mom and dad are going to hold them and cuddle them and give them everything that they want and need. And in that toddler phase, they're beginning to break loose from that and realize, I have my own autonomy. I can get up and walk across the room whenever I want to. Somebody doesn't have to carry me. But now that I can get up and walk across the room, I can also mess with stuff I'm not supposed to. And what's the first word toddlers learn to say back to their parents and caregivers? No. What's the next word? Mine. Entitlement. They have what they have. They want to keep it. They're not going to let you have it. That's a pretty significant beginning to the attitude of entitlement. Now, as they grow older, usually in kindergarten and elementary school, they realize there's other people on this planet and they're going to share your stuff. And so they learn to share, to give, that there's a give and take in every relationship. Sometimes it's a give and take of my stuff. And sometimes I have to share my stuff and realize I'm just not going to get that back because somebody else is a selfish liar and they're going to take my toys, call them their own, and never give them back. Not a good thing, but it happens. But when you move from that elementary pre-K phase of learning to share and you continue as middle school, high school, and college and think, well, if it's out there, it's mine, I'm just going to take it. You're beginning to show that attitude of entitlement. I have a right to it. I want it. That's all that needs to happen. If I want it, I get to take it. Well, that's a bit of a problem. And if that's the promotion, that's the job title, it's the project within the job. I'm going to put my name on that project because I know it's going to come with a lot of recognition and extra income or incentives or awards or rewards, and I want those things. It's mine. I'm taking it. That's where entitlement begins to do its work. Here's some of the things that happen in entitlement. The first of which is there's a demand for specific outcomes. It's not just accepting life as it is. You hear the phrase often under an attitude of entitlement, that's not fair. Welcome to human existence. Life is not fair. And if your parents told you that it was, your parents lied to you. And if something else in your life has convinced you or encouraged you to believe that all of life is fair and everybody gets exactly what they want and the playing field is always fair and we always start at the same point, again, you've been deceived in a very vicious way because the consequences of that can be painful, horrific. Some people don't get what they want out of life and they feel like their justification is to end their own life or somebody else's to get it. I was watching a video about the Kia Boys. I just literally went to a YouTube search, typed in Kia Boys. The first video that came up was a guy who was on the streets asking the question, who are the Kia Boys? What do you know about them? And they found a community where there were several kids that called themselves Kia Boys. Now, when I say kids, the notable thing about the Kia Boys is they're between 12 and 17 years old. And so he asked some very interesting questions of them. He asked them, what happens if you get caught? And one of the 17-year-olds replied, well, once you turn 18, you stop doing it. Because if you get caught between 12 and 17, you get 3 weeks in jail. That's the worst thing that'll happen. What if you get caught in a pursuit? They don't pursue. Why do they not pursue? Well, because local laws tell them they can't, especially in crowded areas. So on residential streets, and as he's saying this, a Kia comes flying down the street with 6 kids in it, 12 to 17 years old, swerving back and forth, dodging between parked cars, tries to make a hard slide around a corner, misses the corner, slides up in somebody's front yard, slams the Kia that they've stolen into the house, a tree, and a fire hydrant, backs out of the yard and drives away. And it's all caught on camera, and you're like, did that really just happen? And where's the woo-woos? I don't hear a siren. I don't hear anybody chasing them. They're not pursuing them. And in the course of the interview, that same red Kia makes probably 5 appearances from different directions flying through the neighborhood. And the guy with the video camera goes, please don't hit my Chevy. And then he turns to me, he's like, well, what happened if a kid, because the school's right there in the corner, what would happen if a kid walked out in front of him? And one of the adults who's hanging out with this crowd of kids who are stealing cars, 100 Kia boys, over 10,000 car thefts in a year's time. 100 Kia boys, over 10,000 cars stolen in a year's time. He said, what happens if you hit a kid that's on his way to school? The grown-up goes, well, the kid shouldn't have been on the road. What? He said, well, what if somebody says, hey, that's my car, I'm going to stand in front of it so you don't steal it? And he's like, they need to understand that their life is not worth that car. What? So your right to steal the car supersedes their right to own the car, so you have the right to run them down? You can just run over them because you want to? Demands of specific outcomes. If I want to steal your car and you get in my way, you might die. But I want your car more than I want you alive. So there you go. And oh, by the way, I'm a minor and they're not going to chase the car in town. So by the time you report to the cops that I have stolen your car from your hospital bed or the back of an ambulance, it's going to be too late. I'm going to be long gone. In fact, I may have already crashed it and run from the scene. And nobody's going to know. Who's going to know? How would they know? That's the attitude of entitlement that says if I want to steal your car and you get in the way, sucks to be you. See, there's another aspect that goes into this attitude of entitlement. You may have already seen this in the work environment, in the school system, in the public arena. And that is this horrible, misbalanced expectation of effort versus reward. I want the payout. I want the best. I want to have what I want, and I shouldn't have to work as hard as everybody else to get it. That's a bit of a problem. But see, if you don't decide to nip in the bud the attitude of entitlement in your workplace, you're going to get people who are like, well, he got a raise, I get a raise. Oh, they got a corner office, I should get a corner office. Well, but he's got 20 years on the job. He's got phenomenal results. He's got great, ROI. What we pay him versus what he produces for the company is incredible. That she's been here for 5 years and she has had incredible performances as well. She has been promoted several times. She's continued her education. She works extra hours. She shows up every time and never asks questions. And so, yeah, she gets a bonus. She gets a pay raise. She gets a vacation. She gets extra time off. We give her flex time so she can spend time with her kids. But not everybody gets that. Those are earned rewards. This is not a system of equality. This is a system of effort and reward. See, when the attitude of entitlement is present, effort and reward are way out of balance. Everybody thinks participation trophy. Well, I showed up. I should get paid the same. I came to work, for heaven's sake. I could have just stayed in bed. Well, back in my day, if you just stayed in bed, you just didn't have a job. The fact that you came to work is kind of the minimum standard. You come to work, you get there a little bit early, you clock out a little bit later, maybe right on time. But while you're there, you give 100%. You don't spend all your time on your phone. You don't spend all your time chatting with your friends. That's not what work is for. Work is to produce for the organization so that it continues to serve the customer and do better things. Don't get me started on my experience with the VA hospital since I came off of active duty as a disabled vet. Just to get somebody on the phone and not get an attitude is a miracle. Just this week, I was on the phone with somebody in the pharmacy, And I say, I've received like 5 calls from your organization asking me when I'm going to send back my test results for this particular thing so you can process them in the lab. But I haven't received the actual test that you expected me to take. And the person on the other side says, well, our job is not to send you the test. So your job is to demand that I return the results so that you can analyze them, but not to send them to? Who does that part? Well, I don't know, but it's not my job. Huh. Sounds like a little entitlement, a little blame, a little resignation going on here. Still don't have the test. They're still expecting results from the lab by the 29th when I go see my doctor. But nobody wants to take responsibility for sending them to me. They just want to give me the responsibility for getting them back. I can't return what I didn't receive. I'm sorry. But you can't get a human on the phone to tell you why you didn't receive them. And the person who supposedly made the request doesn't answer the phone or emails either. So, see, these are the types of attitudes that drive your organization when there's resignation. I've already checked out. I've given up. I'm so short it doesn't matter. We discussed that in the last episode. Blame. Well, it's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's not my job description. And entitlement. I showed up today. I get a paycheck. Who cares if I was rude, ineffective, or unproductive? If I didn't pay attention at all? If I have no idea what's going on in my job and I haven't endeavored to make myself better at this job? None of that matters. I'm here. I get paid. And if you're handing out raises, I'll take one of those too. That's a problem. As a leader, it is your job to decide which attitudes you're going to deconstruct and which attitudes you're going to rebuild. Now, we've got 2 more on the negative side of attitude we'll discuss tomorrow. By the end of this week, we're going to go through a couple of positive attitudes, what those phrases look like, what kind of impact they're going to have in your workplace, how you can kind of generally categorize those attitudes, and what you can expect when you can implement them. I'm going to give you some phrases that you can use, and if you'll start saying those in the office, not just listening for the destructive ones, but speaking the positive ones, you can actually make a change in your environment, your workplace, your home life, your friends, your culture, your community. You can change the expectations from the Kia boys. Is your life really worth standing in the way of me stealing your car? Because I'm stealing it either way. If you die in the process, sorry. Or do you want to change the community that you're in, the environment that you're in, by speaking more positive, intentionally spoken, intentionally placed phrases that will change the attitudes of the people around you? I'd like to believe you want the best for yourself and the people around you, and that speaking these positive phrases will change that. That's what makes you not just a leader, but a great leader. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
You jumped on
Begin
my
your
have a blessed
personal
day
growth
really
plan
fast.
at